Well, welcome everybody and Happy New Year. Happy 2021. I hope it has started off well for each of you. And I know that most of us can say we're pretty excited to be done with 2020. So that's a good thing. Today is our webinar of Listen Into Conversations That Matter by Larger Story. And we've got Larry Crabb on, who's going to be talking with us today about some things going on that he wanted to make known to you guys. And so we wanted to take this time to make you aware of some of those kind of things. We actually have a special guest joining us today as well. My mom, Rachel Crabb, will be saying a few words also, so be looking for her. Anytime we can get mom on screen, that's always great. Dad, welcome.
Good to be with you all. And I do want to introduce my wife, Rachel, who's been the backbone of our lives together for 54 years. And over the last 20, she's been an indispensable background with me for all that's gone on with New Way Ministries. And she said she'd like to say a few words. So she's leaning over my shoulder. You can see her. And she wants to say something to you. So take it away, my dear.
I just wanted to thank you all for being such a good support to us in the past years. Wow, I didn't know I'd become emotional. This was something that happened very suddenly. We knew eventually we were going to be not doing schools of spiritual direction or speaking. Eventually we would be doing that, but it came up in less than a 6-week period of time. We were together on November 21st for our other son's 50th birthday. And Larry looked great. He had all his, didn't lose 35 pounds by that time. And within a couple weeks, he had lost 35 pounds. And so we knew that the door was being closed. But we do want to thank you all for the way you supported us over all these years of ministry with IBC and School of Spiritual Direction. And then the schools, then the colleges he taught at, Grace Seminary and Colorado Christian. So I just wanted to say thank you as part of this ministry. And we so appreciate you.
Thank you, my dear. You're getting me emotional now. But that's very much from the heart of my wife, and I'm incredibly appreciative, particularly now with some of the health struggles that I have, with all of them. She has been remarkably involved without, well, getting fatigued, but never letting a fatigue control her. Well, I want to talk to you today about something that you received a letter, an email, that described that transition is taking place. And it's unfortunate, but it seems well orchestrated. And with the letter in your hands that some of you, probably all of you have received, or many of you at least have, I just felt the need to talk to you about something today, the word transition. Now, I've written out some notes. If you see me looking down at my notes, you'll understand why I'm doing it. I've written out some of what I want to say. I'm sure I'll say a few more things. But I really felt it was appropriate to, and I felt very comfortable, well, not entirely comfortable, talking to you directly to hopefully make clear how I and my team at New Way feel led by God, unmistakably led by God, to do something we had no expectation of doing until the health challenges developed. And that's the reason for the transition. You're going to also hear a little bit from my older son today, Cap, who you've just listened to, about my coming up with a role in Larger Story. But more to the point, I want to just share somewhat briefly, I hope, about the ministry that is now ending, regrettably. And I know it's causing a lot of questions, a lot of sorrow. And I want to have you join me in my grief and sorrow. I'm not excited about ending New Way Ministries. I loved and felt so privileged to do 76 schools of spiritual direction over the last 20 years, as well as I think 14 next steps, as well as doing a 30 years of 3-day Bible conferences at the Billy Graham Training Center. I was there when the training center opened. And so I've done probably close to 30 Bible conferences there that I will not be doing anymore. And I've often said that the Cove, the Billy Graham Training Center, has been the place where I feel most comfortable, most alive, and most with the Spirit when I teach at the Cove. And I'm going to miss that a lot. Maybe talk about it more, and you might see a little emotion coming out of this guy that tries to be a stoic. Well, let me introduce my talk this way. Maybe some of you are old enough, old as I am, that might be very few of you, to be able to remember in the late 1940s and the early 1950s when they had bomb alerts, and all the little kids like me had to scramble beneath our desks. But then what happened is relevant to what I want to say today. It doesn't happen today at all. You'll know what I mean in just a moment, but I can recall this very clearly. Some student, a boy or a girl, who was honored with this particular responsibility would read into the microphone verses from Ecclesiastes, and those verses from the Bible were made clear in every room, every schoolroom, every classroom in the school. That's unthinkable today. It was normal back in that day. And what they would often read, not all the time, but what they would often read would be from Ecclesiastes in ways that has some real relevance to what I'm talking about today. They would read words like this in chapter 3, verse 1. What is it? Yeah, I don't know where it is. Chapter 3, verse 1. Yeah, that's what it is. For everything there is a season. That resonates. A time for every activity under heaven. And then he goes on to say, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to tear down and a time to build up. Not sure if I like that word, tear down, but that's something that we feel must happen. Let me explain why. I want you to be clear as to why we're tearing down or ending New Way Ministries as we now know it. New Way Ministries was planted more than 20 years ago, and the spiritual harvest was gathered. And I couldn't be more grateful for all that the Lord did through all the spiritual directions that I led. And I sure don't claim credit for it. It was all the Spirit's credit, as I think he directed me in my efforts to outline what evangelical, biblically based spiritual direction actually looks like. There was a great harvest, and I couldn't be more blessed and more grateful and more encouraged by that. But it was a time for schools of spiritual direction, for Next Step schools, for 76 SSDs, as I've said, and 14 Next Steps, and for weekend Bible conferences at Billy Graham. But with both regret and with some passion as I look back and look ahead, I realized something that I want to make really clear for just a moment. I could take a lot of moments on this, but the fact that New Way is shutting down has been very, very difficult emotionally for all of us, for you, I presume, but especially for Andy. She's now without a job that she's had now for 20 years or 18 years, I guess. And she's done an incredible job. And let me say very, very clearly, New Way Ministries would simply not have been, it would not have been what it came to be without Andy's organization, hard work, loyalty, wisdom, and incredibly developing godliness. I could not have more respect for Andy, and I'm going to miss her so deeply as a colleague, and we're looking forward to continue, obviously, as real friends. That friendship has developed over all these years, a very profound relationship or friendship. So kudos to Andy. She deserves as much credit as anybody, probably a lot more than me. Well, many of you are aware of what requires the tearing down. It's very simple, my health. That's what it is. And let me just give you, without being maudlin about it, just a brief summary of health challenges that you might not be aware of. Maybe you already are aware of some of them, so I'll try to say them briefly. I developed a number of months ago neuropathy. Took me a while to learn how to pronounce the word. a very strange foot disease that makes walking difficult and ups the risk of falling. I have to be very, very careful when I walk. I climb up my stairs very closely, holding on to the railing 2 at a time. It takes me a while to climb up into my loft where I do my writing and my Zooming where I am right now. Neuropathy 1. Secondly, liver cancer that began in 1997. It's a slow growing cancer that the doctors all tell me cannot be cured, but it can be treated. And I'll know this Friday if the last of many treatments shrank the growing tumor. We're of course hoping it did, but we have no expectation of being cured of the cancer before I die. That's simply the way it is medically. And then I developed a little bit ago, well, a couple of months now, diabetes, likely because I love desserts too much. So some of it's, maybe all of it's my fault. But it was diagnosed a couple of months ago and now requires that I eat mostly tasteless food, even though Rachel is doing her very best and is doing quite well and allowing for whatever taste is possible for dietetic meals. And I'm also required to several times a day take the pinpricks to see my sugar levels. So it's really a difficult disease to have, but we're managing it the best we can. The numbers are not where they should be, but they're generally moving in a better direction, but quite slowly. And then I've mentioned insomnia. I really haven't had a good night's sleep in nearly 4 months. I wish that were not true, but it is. So I don't talk about waking up in the morning. I talk about realizing I am awake and maybe had some dozing along the way for the last 6 or 7 or 8 hours. Well, all of which, as you might say, predictably, I hope you understand, has left me very weary, very little energy. As Rachel mentioned, I've lost close to 35 pounds and I have badly reduced muscle tone. And for an ex-bodybuilder that once came in 16th in a major contest, I am very regretful that my body now looks like a skinny old man. So God maybe is curing me of my vanity, and that maybe has a little way to go. Well, it really does seem to our little team, to Rachel and me, and to Andy, and to Captain Chris and Carlene, that it would be hard for the Lord to be much clearer in what he's directing us to do. I don't believe I would now be able to lead another SSD. It's exhausting. I've loved doing it. I would get a nap every afternoon, and I could nap back in those days most of the time, but I don't think I could manage to be on my feet, on my neuropathic feet, for all the hours, all morning and all evening, and hopefully to sleep in the afternoon. I don't think I could lead another SSD with my health or Next Step or any other kind of live event with me behind a podium speaking to a group gathered in an auditorium or a church. This is the regret. This is something that many of you are not happy about, no more than I am. It's hard. And I want to acknowledge the fact that this is not an easy thing, and I'm not going to speak in a way that, hey, that's over, but here's what's coming. That's not what I'm feeling at the moment, although I am looking forward to what's coming, but I'm deeply regretful that what I had planned to at least age 80, if I were able to do it at age 80 with advanced years, which I thought was possible, but it turned out it's not possible. So healing my sickness does not seem to be God's plan, despite the faithful prayers of many of you folks that I appreciate, prayers that have gone unanswered. I read an article recently where God says, when you get through life, one thing is sure, God's going to confuse you. And I've been confused. Why, Lord? Why the neuropathy? Why the cancer? Why the difficulty sleeping? Why the diabetes? Why all this? Well, those questions don't get an answer. Well, they do get one answer. It's time to end something and to build up something else. Just like Ecclesiastes said, it's time to tear down and to build up. Well, here's what I'm still able to do. I'm still fully able to sit in the writing and studying and reading loft in our home. That's where I am right now. And it really is perhaps not perhaps, but it is my favorite time of the day. I'm quite confident, and I hope I'm correct, that I'm still thinking clearly enough to keep on writing. I think God's given me a gift of writing, and I still can write, I think, quite well. I am confident, and I'm still thinking clearly and writing at least most of the time with some level, and sometimes an extraordinary level of spiritual clarity. And this is the time to build up without denying the regret and the sadness that I feel every time I wake up from a doze and realize that I've got a lot to do with a very sick body. But I'm very glad to be able to build up in the sense of gladly giving all that I produce writing and all I can do with Zoom. And as you all know, for a non-tech guy, that's really quite something. As most of you know, I'm going to pass on everything I'm able to do now to Larger Story. And, I've been doing some monthly remote Bible teaching that I call the Church on Trial, teaching on the Lord's letters to the 7 churches in Revelation, chapter 2 and 3. And all those are available on largerstory.com. And I've also been doing some version on their web of what we call Conversations That Matter, which is what this conversation really is, where I either chat with a guest or do what I'm doing today, basically just talking to you to clarify a little of how we all feel and what the cost is for the Lord orchestrating the tearing down, the ending, the closing of New Way Ministries. And do be aware that the closing of New Way Ministries, it's a nonprofit organization, obviously. And Andy's been doing a lot of work with our CPA and legally and ethically eliminating New Way Ministry as a nonprofit that sponsors schools of spiritual direction, etc. I do feel a real strong passion and a privilege to turn everything I'm grateful to still be able to do over to Larger Story. And I think that's really a good thing, but I don't want to overlook the loss and override that with excitement about the future. There is some excitement about it, but I'm still grieving the loss, and I assume perhaps you are as well. But Larger Story intends to do is to extend whatever is worthy to be called a legacy. And I hope that's a great deal. And hopefully to extend my legacy in a way, not only the older folks, 30, 40, 50, 60, up in the 70s like me, but maybe some real profit from also the millennials. I think the message that I have about what the Christian life really is very different than what a lot of younger people believe it is. It's kind of like, well, pray about it. God will answer your prayers. You'll be blessed with a comfortable life, and you'll be able to serve Jesus with incredible joy, knowing he has his hand on your life. I've experienced a lot of unanswered prayer in my day, and now my prayers for healing have gone unanswered. And to be frank with you, if he chooses to answer me, that's his business, and I certainly will not despise it. I will welcome it. But to be honest with you, and I don't think it's lack of faith, I think it is faith and not living by sight, that he's not going to answer those prayers for the good health that could return me to active ministry in New Way. I don't expect that to happen, so we made the decision. Well, with all that said, and hopefully clear, New Way, as we've known it, is over. New Way, as it will soon become under Larger Story, with their arm for making spiritual direction available through their ministry, that feels really good. I think we have some really good folks that have been trained in spiritual direction by me, and I'm sure have read other worthy books on the topic. And if you sign up for spiritual direction through Larger Story, you're going to get a well-qualified spiritual director who's going to acquaint you with what I think spiritual direction is in the middle of living in a fallen world as a fallen person that Jesus promised would bring many trials and sorrows. We've got to get used to that, and it's going to increase our desire to wait for heaven. And that's a good thing. Difficult reality, but a good thing. And all I can still do, writing books, just finished another one, or almost finished another one. So therefore, I already have 2 nearly completed and will be published by Larger Story Press, likely, who knows when, maybe in a year or so, not soon. And I can still do Zoom communication. And as I've said, it's not my most comfortable one, but I'm getting okay with it because I can reach a lot of people with Zoom, and I'm really willing to let my wife help me arrange the computer so I can sit and talk to you, which of course I'm doing right now. And just a very simple request, nothing that I want to make a big deal out of. Many of you I'm so grateful for, as Rachel indicated. You've been so supportive. You've written encouraging notes. You've given donations. and you've kept New Way Ministry going. We were a donation dependent ministry. We couldn't have made it without your help. And now, as the painful transition is taking place, many of you have generously supported New Way, and I'm very grateful. But if you have any interest in supporting my legacy, which is what's going to be carried on by a larger story, as well as a lot of other good minds, better minds than mine, talking about the Christian life and what is really involved in living for Jesus as we have a difficult life to live in this smaller story. If you're interested in supporting my legacy, which I believe is going to continue in some very significant ways, you can do that, and I obviously hope you will, by no longer giving to New Way. We're no longer accepting donations, but undergird Larger Stories' efforts to make known what I have to share with Christians, literally all over the world. Well, that's really all I wanted to say. Now you've heard it from the horse's mouth. Not sure if I appreciate calling myself a horse, but maybe that fits. And all I can say is thanks for listening and dealing with me the regret that comes with being a ministry that I've been so privileged to enjoy and to be a full part of for all these years. But we believe the Lord has orchestrated our decision, and none of our team argues with that. We don't want to argue with the Lord's leading, and we have no reason to argue with it. Sadness? Yeah, of course, a whole bunch. You're feeling it too, I suppose. And just one little more paragraph, I guess I want to say. I'm now 76 and a half. I had tentatively thought that I'd stop doing SSTs and Next Step at age 80. I think I might have mentioned that. And I imagine many of you listening today were maybe anticipating coming to an SST or Next Step. So all I can say to you, I guess right now, is join me in my disappointment. Maybe the word mourning is not too strong. That's MOURNING, deep sadness. Maybe you're mourning a lost opportunity. I am too. It's not easy. And I wake up every morning realizing I'm not going to lead another SST, Next Step, or a Bible teaching live event. Not going to happen. And I missed the opportunity. So it grieves me, but, and there is a but, if the end of New Way, as we've noted, is the Lord's doing, and we believe it is, then perhaps as we grieve together, we can look forward to whatever the Lord will provide. I'm not entirely clear on that, but it will be through New Way, with whatever I can, I mean, with a Larger Story rather, with whatever I'm still able to do, which up in my loft seems like quite a bit that I'm feeling some passion about. But as I said, passion that doesn't override a sense of lostness that's very real. It's time for everything, even to tear down and to build up. Well, that's the best I can do, folks, on my update on where things stand. And I hope between the emails that you've hopefully received and the talk on transition I just offered, that you're clear on the end of something that was very, very good. And that's hard to bear. And on what promises to lie ahead in the Lord's timing and in his will, which none of us can be totally confident of, but we're looking forward. The beginning of something sadly lost and the provision of something that we trust is going to be good. Thank you for listening, folks. Thanks for understanding where my heart is, where Rachel's heart is. You saw her getting very choked up. I had to be a stoic to keep from getting choked up. But the Lord wants his way, and it confuses me. But I'm kind of done with asking questions that he's not going to answer. God, why this? Why the other? Why did you end it now when I could have been healthy and doing more? He's not going to answer those questions. So I'm going to put them aside. I'm kind of bored with the questions. And now I'm just a little more interested in seeing where the Lord's going to take me and my wife from here with whatever time, whatever years, maybe another 10 years, I don't know, whatever years we have left. So once again, thanks for listening. I hope I haven't muddied the waters more, but made things a little bit clearer for you. Again, thanks for being a part of all that we've been doing for the last 20 years. Bye-bye.
Dad, I don't think that you realize and you and mom both, what kind of impact you've had on people. I was part of a group last night that's going through 6 weeks of a program, just getting to know each other a little bit more. These are all people who just talked about you in some amazing ways and told some stories. And I've got a couple of stories as well. And I know this has been a tough year for you in a lot of ways. But one of the things that I'm grateful for, and you mentioned it, and I thought we could maybe chat about it just for a second while we have some people here listening, is you've been writing a lot, more than we can even keep up with. You've already finished another manuscript, actually 2 additional manuscripts. The last one that you just finished is one that I think I want to chat with with you about today in front of some of these people. And it's titled, It's Too Much. And how have you changed or grown or come to know the Father deeper through what's going on in your life right now?
Well, I appreciate you bringing up the book and how has it impacted me. I would say not as much as I want, but definitely some. And what I think was prompted by, and I think it was I'm pretty sure it was the Spirit of God. What he was giving me felt like just too much. The neuropathy, the cancer, the inability to sleep, the insomnia, the diabetes. It's, kind of a quad tricta, if that's even a word, 4 things, not one. And I would wake up, again, not wake up from only dozing. That's all I did. But I would get up just wondering, God, why are you giving me too much? And then I just began thinking about Jesus, and he went through a lot more too much experiences than I'm ever going to go through. Think of his 3 major, what I would call too much experiences. The wilderness temptation, where Satan tempted him in ways that really were temptations, and they felt like too much. I know you're hungry, Jesus. You haven't eaten for 40 days, 40 nights. Turn this stone into bread. Why don't you take care of your stomach? And he responds with scripture and says, no, I'm going to live by the word of God. That's my bread. So it wasn't too much for Jesus to go through what I would call the too much experience of loss. And then in Gethsemane, think about what he said there. He told his 3 inner ring friends that the Lord is crushing me, but the Father is crushing me to the point of death. And talk about a too much experience, that he was facing crucifixion. And he was begging the Lord to spare him from the crucifixion because it seemed like too much. But then what did he do? He got up, told the sleeping disciples to get up, and he walked toward the soldiers that were going to beat him up and eventually crucify him. His too much experience wasn't too much for him. And the important point that I've taken away that's in the book is he didn't use his divine power, which he had because he was still fully God, as he was fully man, but he resisted the temptations of the devil and the temptation to want to get out of the cross as a mere man. How do you call Jesus a mere man? But only in the strength that he received from the baptism, knowing full well that the Spirit of God was living on him and that the Father deeply loved him, as a mere man, knowing he was loved and anointed by the Spirit, he found he had the strength to resist the temptation to try to skip the crucifixion. And I thought, is that possible for me when I face my too much, which I'm facing right now every day? Well, maybe it is, because I'm a mere man as well, and I'm loved by the Father as much as Jesus is loved by the Father, and the Spirit of God dwells within me. So maybe as a mere man who's loved and dwelt by the Spirit, maybe I can look at my too much experiences and realize they're not too much for me to persevere and to delight the Father by not giving up on his goodness when his goodness doesn't align much with what I would call good, but trusting that he's right and I'm wrong. And then, of course, the last one, and I'm talking too much here, but let me add one more. Maybe the most too much experience the Lord ever was asked to endure, when 3 hours of darkness spread across the land from 12 till 3 while he was being crucified. And it was during that time that the Father turned his back on Jesus, and Jesus had no sense of the Father's witness with his beloved Son. All he had was the devil talking to him about what an idiot he was to go through this, when all he had to do was accept the devil's offer to buy into the world as it was. And the Lord was not attracted to buying into this world as it is. He had better plans to make this world entirely new. And it just got me thinking, maybe I'm not facing too much. Feels like it. I don't have much sense of the Lord's presence, but I know he loves me. I know the Spirit's in me. I know I have a wonderful community and so many people, many of you who are listening and you've prayed for me, you've written notes to me, and it means so much to me. A couple of really, really close friends that mean the world to me, a wife that means more than anything, as well as my 2 sons, 2 daughters-in-law, and 5 grandchildren. They've at times been able to express some meaningful, maybe sympathy is the right word, or concern for where I am. So it's been quite a time, and I've really been able to write, and very excited that God has still given me that opportunity. And it's been helpful in the ways I'm going to describe in the last chapter. It's too much that I haven't finished yet, but I wanted to honestly, without sugarcoating it, describe the impact my first 10 chapters have had on my too much experiences. And I don't want to understate the lack of impact, because it's not full. It's not where I want it to be. I'm still struggling with things, and I'm not fully settled and fully trusting the Lord, but I'm coming a little closer. So those are the 2 books I've written. The other one is called Off Track, Time to Rejoin God's Larger Story. And I think these might be 2 significant books. They are for me, and I hope they'll be for readers when we get around to publishing them through a Larger Story Press.
They've both been really incredible. And I think that as I hear you talking, Dad, I think the last few years of your ministry opportunities are going to be really powerful. I'm seeing it coming out now in your writing and what you're doing and how you're thinking. I love your slogan of your life now is, I don't care. I don't care what people think of you. You don't care what people say about you. You're going to give what the Lord's given you. And you've impacted so many people. And I don't think you're even aware of the impact that you've had to us. And when you say you're talking too much, my thought is no. If this is the only way we get access to you now, talk all you can. This is your platform.
Well,
This is what you're going to be doing. So,
Kemp, I really very sincerely appreciate your heart for me and for Mom, for what we're able to do. And I do have some understanding. And I remember Dr. James Houston, who, one of my real heroes, some of you have heard me talk about him, a very unusually godly man. But I remember a friend was talking to Jim. He insists I call him that. He's Dr. James Houston, but I have the privilege of calling him Jim, as really a friend and a mentor. And a friend of mine said to Jim, "Oh, Jim, I hope you're aware of the impact that your life has made on Larry." Jim never has a predictable response. He said, "Oh, my dear friend Marcia," he called her, "sometimes perhaps it's better to not know your impact on others. It really might go to your head." And I thought, oh Lord, let it go to my head. I want to be encouraged. But he's right, and I'm just still immature. But whatever encouragement I get from people that tell me my life has impacted them, I'm deeply grateful. Thank you.
well, no one more than me. I just appreciate you people joining us today to get a chance to chat with Larry or hear what Larry has to say. One of the main reasons that we did this today was to get a chance for you to hear what's going on. We want to make a quick announcement that next Tuesday on January 26th, we're going to actually be having the follow-up to this webinar. That gives us a little chance for you all to mourn what's happening with New Way Ministries. Pray for Larry, pray for Rachel as they move into this next phase of life, which sometimes can be very difficult. But then next week at 4:00 on Tuesday, on the 26th, we're going to talk about what's coming next. And you've seen that Larry has the opportunity to chat with you guys through this venue and through this format. And so we're going to try to capitalize as much as we can, and whatever the Lord will give us, and whatever opportunity Larry wants to take in respect to what we're doing. That's one of the reasons why we started Larger Story. I thought when he passes away, it will not be a good thing if this message dies. So we're going forward.
Well,
Join 26th. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for joining.
let me just say one thing, if I can close out with this.
Yeah.
Number one, I've already said it, but I want to say it again. I am profoundly grateful for the way you've been involved and supportive. And I'm not talking about financially, I'm talking about emotionally and with your own spiritual lives with New Way Ministries. And I am quite willing and very much able to join you in this appointment. But at one level, how can we be disappointed in the Lord's leading? Well, I think I'm managing to be disappointed in the Lord's leading, but there's something deeper in my soul that maybe is able to trust him for what he has in the future for all of us. It's not going to be next steps, not going to be SSDs, not going to be Bible teaching to a live audience. But I don't think the Lord has given up on any of us. And one of the verses that I've been hanging on to in Psalm 119, verse 8, the psalmist, after talking about a wonderful wisdom of the Lord, he says this: Lord, please don't give up on me. I don't think that's a prayer anybody needs to pray. This is not going to give up on you and your spiritual growth. Whatever work he's begun in your soul and in mine, he's going to continue to do quite adequately without SSDs and next steps. They were not indispensable to him. They were useful to him for a season. And now that season is gone and a new one is taking its place. There's a time for everything. I guess I'm done. That's what I wanted to say.
New Way has left a huge print on people's souls, and they're grateful. We're grateful. Join us next Tuesday for the follow-up to this. And we hope and pray that Larger Story will continue to make an impact and leave an imprint on people's souls as we continue to talk about this message of what it means to put Jesus on display by how we relate to others. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. We'll hopefully see you guys next week. Same time, same place. Have a great week.